probably 20 years into my marriage when I realized my wife didn't like me anymore. I had always leaned
Uh-huh.
so heavily on the idea that we loved each other, but I realized that on a day-to-day basis, the way I was showing up in the world, if we were starting over and we had just met, she would not choose me. And it was the first time that the idea that the importance of like is right up there with, if not even more important than love.
Welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm your host, Dan Purcell, a sex and intimacy coach for married couples. My mission is to help you build and maintain a sexually vibrant and emotionally intimate marriage. Join me each week as we explore principles and practical tools based on Christian values to create the passionate, joyful, and thriving marriage you're designed to have. So what do you do when you suddenly realize your spouse still loves you, but they kind of struggle to like you? Like, loving and liking is a different thing. And what do you do if sex feels like it's a negotiation every time? It feels kind of like an obligation or duty, something that you kind of have to schedule or you have to put agreements in place in order to make it happen. And it kind of lacks that spark, that enthusiasm, that heck yeah, I want to do this with you. And then what do you do about times when you really want to be close intimately and you kind of struggle with the emotional connection side? Because frankly, a lot of men say they want to connect sexually first and then they feel emotionally connected. And a lot of women say, I want to feel emotionally connected first before I could connect sexually. That's what this podcast episode answers. My guest today is Matt Sallas. You're going to love him. He's got an amazing story, 25 years in the making, and he's going to reveal at the end what he calls his 3-step sex sequence that applies to both men and women and how to build an intimate marriage they both love. Before we get into this episode, let me quickly tell you that our cruise that we have coming up in October has officially sold out. Thank you, everyone, for signing up, registering, and your interest. It's going to be a fantastic cruise. It's going to be a great experience for those coming on the cruise. And we have our next in-person event in April. So you can go to our website, getyourmarriageon.com/events, and you're going to see a waiting list for our next in-person retreat, which is great for any couple that wants to implement the things that we talk about on this podcast in their marriage in a really fun, upbeat, supportive, and frankly, a great, fun environment. So supportive and fun. Also want to let you know, I just released a new app. It's called Sparked. It's spelled Spark with an apostrophe D, Sparked. And you can find it on the App Store or the Google Play Store. This is to take your date nights on steroids. So if you're the kind of couple that you want to date each other regularly still in your marriage, but you really want a lot of pizzazz, you really want to take your dating game to the next level, this is it. Full of tons of resources. And you get so much benefit when you sync with your spouse in the app. So download it and invite your spouse to download it too. It'll really help you drive those conversations, reignite the spark in your relationship. Without further ado, let's go meet Matt and talk about emotional masculinity. Matt, welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. How are you?
I'm great, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great getting to know you, and I got to know your wife a little bit better. The message you share is so powerful, and I'm looking forward to our listeners hearing what you've come up with. You've got such an interesting story and how you've arrived here. But first, I want to hear of a time maybe in your marriage where you woke up to a realization that the direction it was going isn't the direction you wanted it to go anymore.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. Probably the biggest epiphany relationship-wise that I've ever had is the day, probably 20 years into my marriage, when I realized my wife didn't like me anymore. I had always leaned so heavily on the idea that we loved each other. We have 4 children together. Our lives are intertwined in so many ways, personal and business-wise. And I always knew that the love was strong, but I realized that on a day-to-day basis, the way I was showing up in the world, if we were starting over and we had just met, she would not choose me. And it was the first time that the idea that the importance of like is right up there with, if not even more important than love. That's the first time that it dawned on me, because there there was no change for me in the degree to which I liked my wife throughout our marriage. But we've been through a lot. I was a high functioning alcoholic for 25 years, found sobriety. We like to say sobriety is not a solution, but it is a prerequisite. So once I found sobriety, then we had all the hard work to do. And it was during this period that I realized, oh my God, the versions of ourselves that we're becoming as we grow and develop and become better versions of ourselves individually. My wife doesn't like the version of me she's married to. And, that was a huge hurdle that we had to overcome.
Wow. So how'd you overcome that?
I had to, rather than be fixated on the way I wanted to show up, I had to start to really put quality time and take an interest and curiosity in what my wife was looking for in a partner. So, she wasn't looking for someone to stomp around the house and make all the decisions and discipline the kids and then be grumpy about work. She was looking for someone to co-parent with her, to listen, to take her ideas and decisions as it relates to raising her children to heart and prioritize them over my own when there was conflict sometimes. She was looking for someone who, I think a great example of this, and it ties into all the work that we've done around emotional safety. After sobriety and when I was getting more healthy, I didn't yell at my wife or my kids for things that they did. I didn't yell at them at all, but I would still yell at the TV screen if I was mad about politics or my team was losing the big game. And that just created a level of anxiety in the house that put everyone on pins and needles. Everyone's walking on eggshells. I'm not mad at anyone. I'm mad at the TV screen, but I'm still creating anxiety. And so that's one of the aspects that my wife just didn't like about me. Like, why would I want to walk around here with a guy that's got everyone on edge?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And would you think some of these things too, talking about the first 20, 25 years as an alcoholic, it kind of masked these patterns that you had? And so when you became sober, it's now uncovering things that have always been there, but now it's more exposed. So it's like, oh, they've always been there, but they were masked with the alcohol, I guess, or the intoxication. Oh, sorry, the addiction. I don't know what the right word is for this, but
all three work. All three are fair.
Yeah,
No,
or whatever.
I mean, I am a naturally very curious person, but I didn't find that out until about 10 years ago, Dan, because you're right. Every time there was a discomfort in my life, I turned to alcohol medicinally. It started out as drinking with my friends in high school, exploration, and then, drinking pretty heavily in college. It was a big party scene. And then, happy hours in a professional setting as an adult. And then, my dad drank every day after work. He had a couple gin and tonics. So I thought that was normal. So I was drinking on my own as well. And it just snowballed. And anytime there was any level of discomfort, I think as men, we are conditioned to only feel a very narrow range of emotions. And anytime I felt something that was outside of joy or anger, I drank to medicate that. And so once I got that out of the way, that let me kind of peel back the layers and look at how I was showing up in the world and what I wanted to be. And I have to say, alcohol was a huge issue for me and for my wife, for my family. But there's also a lot of conditioning elements too. Even once alcohol was gone, I was still, like I said, stomping around kind of like the patriarch of the house and not understanding that the world was evolving and that my role needed to evolve as well. So very, very complex, but huge blessing in my life is that curiosity, the fact that, if something's not working, I'm not just going to be frowny faced about it and, move on and do something different. I'm going to dig in and try to figure out why it's not working. And that was the case with my marriage. And honestly, between that and my wife's patience and her determination, that's what saved our marriage.
Mm-hmm. So what was the sexual relationship like at that time?
Oh, toxic to say the least. During active addiction, most addicts, myself included, in addition to alcohol, we look to other transfer addictions, other things to get that dopamine hit and it's all about us. It's selfish, selfish, selfish. And so the sexual relationship within my marriage was medicinal as well. You can imagine my wife was taking less and less interest in being with me. Her trust for me was gone. Any
Mhm.
kind of emotional intimacy was completely gone. And so sex was for her, it was a dutiful act. And,
Mm.
this is despicable. I'm not at all proud. I'm ashamed, terribly ashamed of this. But, there were times where my wife would agree to have sex because she wanted me not to stay up all night arguing about it and keep the kids up. Um,
Mhm.
when I say medicinal, we had a period where we called it the agreement, where we would have some kind of sexual contact pretty much every night. And I'm not going to say that my wife never got any pleasure. She did occasionally, but she had to be in a really relaxed, peaceful state of mind that was so rare at those times when I was
Uh-huh.
drinking and causing, I would have binges where I would cause real trauma in the relationship every few weeks, but I would have
Mhm.
uh, enough drinking that I was causing chaos in the relationship all the time. And it's hard to find,
Mhm.
mutually beneficial, sexy time when there is chaos just ever present in the relationship. So I was using my sexual relationship with my wife medicinally, and she was becoming more and more disgusted by, anything sexual oriented.
Did it get to a breaking point where like this has to change? And if so, what changed and what was born out of that?
It did. The breaking point was all about control. In
Mhm.
sobriety, I had given up alcohol, my main medicine, but I wanted that sexual release. I wanted to keep that. We had this agreement that we had been doing for years where she was acquiescing and, the obligatory kind of wifely duty sex, like all the toxic, terrible words that it's hard for me to even get out of my mouth. Um,
Uh-huh.
but, we reached a point where it just clearly wasn't working and we had to try something different. And I didn't know what the solution was. I had no answer and she had no answer either. But we abolished the agreement and we said, the rate with which we have sex, the frequency is going to go way down. And we had to find a way for it to be, like I said, mutually beneficial and something that we both had an interest in. And by releasing that control, I was so afraid, Dan, to release the agreement because that was my safety blanket. That was my assurance that I was going to have. I was getting a lot of, emotional connection from the physical connection. My wife was getting none of that. But
Uh-huh.
so by releasing the control, the agreement, abolishing that, I didn't put it in the context of control all the time, but I certainly do now. I was freeing
Mhm.
her up to reject me anytime she wanted. And that was actually a huge blessing in the long term because I'm a strong believer that enthusiastic consent is way more important than reluctant consent. I talk a lot about
Uh-huh.
what I call the rejection inherent in reluctant consent. When she would say yes, but she wasn't really present, she didn't really want to be there. I could tell.
Uh-huh. It's still a
And
rejection of some sort. Yeah.
it
Uh-huh.
isn't, it felt toxic, afterwards and later. When I was
Uh-huh.
drinking,
Uh-huh.
I was oblivious to that. But in sobriety, I started to be very kind of hyper aware of it. And it just felt bad,
Mhm.
and we had to find a different way.
What you're saying reminds me of Disney's Beauty and the Beast, when the Beast realizes the only way for Belle to love him is for him to let her go.
Yes.
And everyone in the cast is like, "What did you do? You let her go?
Yeah.
Like the last rose petal's about to fall, right?" But that's like the chasm you had to cross. That's for a lot of people, that's a very scary chasm.
It was terrifying.
Like that's a hard place to cross.
I would
Uh-huh.
like to say we had talked to someone like you and they gave us the suggestion. We did it because we just had run out of options. Like it was
Yeah.
like this thing is falling apart faster than we can put the pieces back together. And so we had to try something different.
So you've crossed that continental divide. So there's more agency on her part for sex. It's not about control. Then you've come up with something that you call this is it the sex sequence?
Yeah, that's right. I've been,
Let's
yeah.
let's talk about that for a bit. But I just for context, you also have a master's degree in sexual health. So this isn't something that you've like just made up. You've got a lot of training, you've got a lot of thought behind what you're about to share, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been about a decade now that I've been studying addiction and really specifically the impact of the addiction on partnerships, on intimate relationships. And
Uh-huh.
and not just addiction, but the emotional abuse that goes along with it. And so that's kind of the trifecta where I've spent my time: emotional abuse, addiction, and intimacy. And One of the things that's really interesting in working with couples that have experienced addiction, they're often very willing to tell their story. I mean, we live in a different day and age than we used to, and addiction is a less taboo topic. But where the conversation always ended was at the bedroom door. It's really hard to get people to talk about their sex life and how it's been impacted by addiction. And so that's why I went back to school and got the master's in sexual health, because I just needed more help exploring this topic. And from that has come the sex sequence, which actually has surprised me in its simplicity, but also in the degree to which people don't follow these 3 steps. So basically, I'm the kind of guy, Dan, that I can be ready to go sexually at any moment. I don't need the sex sequence, or I don't think I do. Physically, I definitely don't. Arousal wise, I definitely don't. But for my wife, it's very different. She needs these 3 steps. The first step in the sex sequence is emotional safety. Emotional safety is going back to me stomping around about a football game or a political thing I don't like, getting that out of the household. I can still discipline my children, but I need to do it with my voice lowered and not do it the way I was taught by my father and my grandfather. I've got to end that kind of generational passing down of discipline techniques. I have to be, when my wife wants to bring something to me, we always, on our podcast, we talk all the time about the orthodontics bills, because we have 4 kids and they've all had orthodontics. So when they first find out they're going to have braces, that's another, $5,000. And so that would be the kind of situation where I'd be working away in my office, typing away on the computer, and Sherry would walk in and say, "Well, we got back from the orthodontist. It's another $5,000." What? Like I'm losing my mind, right? I'm not mad at my wife. I'm not mad at my children for their crooked teeth. I'm just mad at the situation. But when I express that, I just make everything uncomfortable. So emotional safety, a great tangible example of emotional safety is my wife can come and tell me somebody needs $5,000 worth of orthodontics, and I remain level and calm. And we all know it's not my wife's fault. And I don't treat her as though it's her fault. I treat her as though, don't make the messenger pay for the message, right?
Yes.
So that's the emotional safety piece. Emotional intimacy is the next part of the sex sequence. That's taking it to the next level. That's not just me being a calm and a listener who doesn't activate my wife's nervous system. That's me initiating. That's me saying, "Hey, yesterday you were talking about this conversation you were going to have at work, and I know there was some conflict involved and you were worried about it. Tell me how that went." Or, gosh, one of our kids stayed out late past their curfew. And when they came in, I know it was late. We were both tired. We were upset in the moment. How are you dealing with that the next morning? Like, where are your emotions? Are you still upset? So emotional intimacy is exploration. It's proactive, whereas emotional safety is more just setting the stage and making sure things are okay. And that sets the stage. If we have an emotionally safe environment and I am instigating emotional intimacy, then that sets the stage for sexual intimacy that's mutually beneficial, mutually orgasmic. Everybody feels good, and the physical contact feels welcomed instead of, like I said before, obligatory.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. All right. Got it. So step 1, it's establishing safety, which I like how you described. That's like being able to self-regulate, self-soothe better, like a better handle on your natural instincts to just be so reactive all the time. And then step 2, it's actually engaging at an emotional level. This is investing in your spouse. This is like caring, like genuine care and concern. And then from there,
Dan, this is where guys really struggle with that second step. Most guys can figure out the emotional safety piece, but the emotional intimacy, because I'll hear guys say to me, "Well, I listen when she talks. Like, isn't that enough? Like, I don't want to listen, but I do. I put my computer away and I turn and I face her and I make eye contact. Dad, what more do you want from me?" And I'm here to say we live in a different time than we used to. And engaging proactively is a huge step for keeping the spark alive and keeping the intimacy strong in a relationship.
And is this what you call emotional masculinity then? The skill?
It ties into that. Being able to navigate the sex sequence ties into emotional masculinity. Would you like me to talk a little bit about emotional masculinity?
Yeah, I want to learn more about that. Tell me more about that.
Great. So I think, Dan, that we live in a really exciting time. And I think we're being distracted. We're having trouble seeing the forest through the trees. What I mean by that is all the attention as it relates to the major upheaval that's taken place during our lifetime is on technology. It's on social media and the internet and AI. I'm here to say I think the progress made by women during the 50 years I've been on this planet is even more exciting, more relevant, and especially in the context of an intimate relationship, something we need to pay more attention to. What I'm talking about there, women have gained educational superiority, financial independence, sexual autonomy,
Mm-hmm.
intellectual equality, and we men have to adapt. And we have yet to do that adequately, in my opinion. I don't think it's fair that we ask men to get rid of or ignore a million years or 1,000 years or whatever of masculine instincts. I think the masculine instincts are ingrained and they're still there. But what we can ask men to do as it relates to adapting to the changes in women is to redirect the masculinity. We're no longer called upon to guard the entrance to the cave and make sure a bear doesn't eat our family. That's not part of masculinity anymore. So we can still lead and provide and protect. We just need to do that in an emotional context. That's where emotional masculinity comes in. So lead, provide, and protect. When we're providing that emotional safety that I talked about, that kind of baseline, making sure that the flow and the feel of the household and in our intimate relationship, that it's calm and nervous system is regulated. When we talk about providing, or that's providing emotional safety, when we're talking about protecting, we need to protect our families from critique, criticism, and a comparison. If you think about it, when we go out in the big bad world, we're constantly exposed to what other people are doing, what other people think of us. I know as a child growing up, I'd go to school and I'm trying to compete on the soccer field and I'm trying to compete in the classroom and I'm trying to compete for girls. And I'm comparing myself to my fellow students. And then I come back to the house. And back when I was a kid, all of that ended. Being at home was a safe place because I didn't have access to all of that anymore. Now with social media, these kids never get a break. They are constantly in comparison and critique mode. And so I think the way we parent has to change. It's really important that we not be part of that critique and comparison and criticize mode. I don't know about you, Dan, but I was raised in a family, and my sister was kind of princessified, I like to say, and I was teased. That was like my dad's love language for me, was to tease me. So anytime I did something that was joke worthy, it was coming my way. But I think I've had to learn how to parent differently. I have one girl and 3 boys. And my natural instinct was to princessify my daughter and tease my boys. And I had to get away from that because they're under such a constant pressure of comparison and critique. And so, oh boy, it's hard, Dan. They'll do something goofy and I'll like lead, like I want to get the dig in there. Like it's right there, it's low hanging fruit. But, and this has a huge impact on my intimate relationship as well, because when my wife sees me protecting my kids, limiting screen time, having family dinner around the kitchen table every night where we're having conversation, no phones allowed. I never thought until I started exploring my curiosity that was actually an intimate moment for my wife to see me parenting that way, as opposed to teasing my boys and everyone's on screens all the time. So that's the protect aspect of emotional masculinity. Lead. We can still follow that instinct to lead, but we need to lead those emotionally intimate conversations I talked about a little while ago. We need to get out of our comfort zone and talk about things that are outside of the 2 emotions that we naturally feel of joy and anger, right?
And the third, horny. And
that's right.
I love that.
We got to expand beyond that.
Good. So the stigma culturally is men aren't the emotional ones. If you show emotion, you're weak. And that's not what we're really talking about here. Show more emotion per se. It's like lean into your masculine instincts of leading, protecting, providing. And, but now you're leading, protecting, providing at an emotional level also, not just purely a physical level. And that kind of turns the tables a bit. Now there you can lean into the strengths. Like, so it takes strength sometimes to really connect with your kids on an emotional level, or connect with your wife at an emotional level. So back to the scenario of like the husband complaining to you. I put my phone down, I close the laptop, I face them, and I listen. What more can you expect? What's your answer to that then?
We've got to grow some emotional grit. That's another aspect of emotional
Uh,
masculinity. We need to be more resilient. We all grew up, you playing football with your buddies and you get knocked down and you get up and you'll brush the dirt off and you keep going. We know how to be gritty as men, but
yes.
we don't
Uh-huh.
often explore that in an emotional context. And we just have to. If I show up for my wife in a way like I described earlier, where I'm really riled up about something and I'm letting that fly, and she leaves
Mhm.
the room, I can't go pout behind her. Why didn't you listen to the rest of my rant? Like, if that's not a comfortable place for her, I need to be
Uh,
the gritty, resilient one from an emotional context and understand I have to show up a certain way in order to get the reception that I want. It's on me. I mean, my wife is available for me emotionally. She's available for me physically in all these ways to be a co-parent, to manage the house together. But I have to be resilient in the way I show up emotionally in order for her to want to participate in that way.
that's really good. And this leads to building a better sexual relationship because you're just setting that foundation, right? We have the safety. Now there's investment emotionally, right? With emotional intimacy. And that just makes the physical just that much more sweeter, more meaningful in that sexual experience too.
It does, and it's sweeter for both of us. We get there in different ways. I heard a great joke, like an online reel the other day. I would love to give
Uh-huh.
attribution, but I don't. I'd never seen the comedian before. But she's in a club, in a comedy club, and she looks at the couple in the front row, and she
Uh-huh.
says, "What is your biggest fear on a first date?" And the man says, "Well, I don't know. I guess I'm afraid I'm going to spill some of my food on me." And I'm thinking to
Uh-huh.
myself as a man as well, when she's asking the question, I'm thinking, I guess my biggest fear on a first date would be that I would like accidentally pee on myself when I went to the bathroom or something. That's not anything that happens
Uh-huh.
regularly, but that would be my biggest fear. And then she looks at the
Uh-huh.
woman sitting at the table in the front row and she says, "What's your biggest fear on a first date?" The woman says, "That I'll be raped and murdered." And, of course, that's the answer she's looking for. Like, guys, we have to understand the degree to which we are engaging in any relationship, first date or 10 years down the road, we're engaging differently. And so the way that the sex sequence and being emotionally masculine changes my intimate relationship is I provide for my wife things that I don't necessarily need. I don't need emotional safety to have sexy time, and I don't need emotional intimacy to have sexy time. But if I provide those, then my wife shows up in a way where she feels free, she feels comfortable, she's uninhibited, and the sex is 1,000 times better. And so I
Yeah.
get the physical contact that I'm really wanting and needing. But there's the emotional piece for me because I can tell by the way my wife is touching my arm how into it she is. And if I give her the thing she needs, then she's going to touch my arm in the way that I'm like, I'm a stud. She loves being in here with me. This is great. She's loving it as much as I am. And then my self esteem goes up. And there's kind of like an afterglow from it. But all those pieces have to be there. It's not just about like swinging from the chandelier. It's about her feeling comfortable enough to swing from the chandelier and not forcing it. And that is huge. And that's been
Mhm.
something that has taken me years to understand. And that's the message that I try to get across to other guys who are like me and are spontaneously aroused and they don't need any of the foreplay. Yeah, you do. Whether you think you need it or not, it's going to pay off big time in the end.
That's a great perspective. And what is something on a regular basis, a habit that you've seen, couples that thrive, what is something they do to kind of keep that spark alive?
Well, that's a great question. I had to have a shift in mindset. I mean, it's really easy to say, gosh, I've been married coming up on 30 years now. It is really easy to let that get boring and routine and to start to take each other for granted. But the solution for me to avoiding that, it ties back into when I told you, Dan, that I realized my wife didn't like me anymore. I try to come at every interaction with my wife with the acronym ABD, always be dating.
Love it. Okay.
It's a takeoff from an Alec Baldwin movie and then an Alec Baldwin SNL skit where he was an elf in Santa's workshop and it was ABC, always be cobbling. So it's a takeoff from that, but always be dating. I think about every interaction that I have with my wife as though it's a second date. I want to be interesting and engaged. I want her to enjoy my presence, and I want to bring something to the conversation, to the relationship. Listen, one of the things that I learned in my graduate studies, after a woman has children, things change hormonally. There are some things that change in the brain as well. And her prioritization goes toward nurturing those children. And it's really easy for me to get man hurt and get sad because I'm no longer top priority. And for a long time I did. But then I realized this is a beautiful thing that my wife prioritizes my children and I prioritize kind of her and the whole family in kind of a protection masculine mode. This is how the species has survived. Why am I fighting this? Like, let her prioritize my children. But what that means is I can't stomp around the house and complain about things and then expect her to feel close to me. I have to be in always be dating mode to a greater extent than she does. Look, every time I look at her, I want to touch her and I want to be with her and I want to, whether it's sexual or otherwise, like there's just that spark for me. She doesn't feel that. She's worried about the kids all the time. And so I have to create that spark. I have to be showing up in a way that shows how much I appreciate her prioritization, the way it falls toward the kids, and just the way I appreciate the fact that she continues to put up with me after all these years.
That's good. I love it. So I think I use a similar term. It's foreplay all day, but it's this constant pursuit. You're in pursuit of her. You're in pursuit of her goodness, her richness, and it's not taking her for granted, but coming at it with fresh eyes every day. I like that mentality. It's fresh every day. It's the second date every day. I like that.
Let me react to foreplay all day because when I talk with people about the necessity to maintain consistent emotional safety, I'm talking 100% of the time. If you think about it, Dan, if you do the math, 1% of our day is 14 minutes. So if I say I'm 99% emotionally safe, that means you went on a tirade for 14 minutes. That's not okay. That's not going to create the kind of connection in the relationship that we're looking for. So yes, foreplay all day, be constantly being in always be dating mode. It sounds arduous. I'm sure guys are going to hear this and roll their eyes and be like, oh my God, this guy, what Disney movie does he think he's living in? It's not that hard. It's just a pattern. It's like any other pattern. Once we get it rolling, right, and we show up that way consistently, it's not hard to close the laptop and turn and face my wife and listen to her and compliment her on something she did or something she said or a way she parented or whatever. It's not as hard as it sounds. It just takes practice and it takes dedication.
That's really good. Wow, this has been a great conversation, Matt. Anything else you want to share with us to help couples, especially men listening, to harness their masculinity, to create better emotional connections, better friendships, better sexual relationships as a whole?
Yeah.
Or if you're the wife listening to this, what would you hope they would listen and take away from to help support their husbands better in helping them have more of this emotional masculinity in their role?
Yeah, that's a great question. Men are typically fairly competitive. I'm a high school and college soccer coach, and I coach both men and women. And the major difference is everything I do with the men has to be a competition, even if it's, we're going to go get water. Who can be the first to the water jug? Like everything's got to be a competition with men. And so this emotional masculinity thing, this is going to have legs. In 20 years, we're not going to be talking about emotional masculinity because that's going to be how we show up in the world. I'm convinced of that. And so right now, there's an opportunity for men who embrace this to be the winners, whether that's the winners in a committed partnership that you're already in your marriage, or if you're in the dating market. And, we've done research recently that he talks about what women are looking for in a new romantic relationship. There's still a lot of old thought out there that they're looking for financial signaling from men. They're not. They're to 8x degree, 8 times more likely to mention kindness and emotional safety as an attribute they're looking for than the financial side. They can earn their own money. So the men who embrace emotional masculinity in their existing partnership or in a new one, they're going to be the winners. They just are. They're going to have better sex lives. They're going to have better connections and better relationships. And it's going to be better for their internal health. Like there's so many ways that this is beneficial. From the perspective of the women, I really encourage women to demand 100% emotional safety in your relationship. Your guy can step up and meet that. But
he can handle it.
Every time you just kind of, you let it activate your nervous system, you go into fight or flight mode. And it's not because he's yelling at you. It's because he's yelling at some outside, his boss was mean to him and he's screaming about that at home. Every time you allow that to happen, you're kind of perpetuating it. And so I would encourage women, demand 100% emotional safety. Your guy can do that if he tries.
Yeah, very good. Oh, so good. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's say you're listening to this. You've gotten a lot better at emotional safety. You're a lot more invested emotionally, and you have a great sexual relationship now. And now you're ready to take things to the next level. I think I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here. But what would you give us as a black belt sex tip? Black belt meaning this is like, you've covered the basics and now you're ready for the more advanced stuff. With your training and your background, what's one tip or move or concept that you can teach us to make sex that much better in the marriage?
I think the most important thing that we've done to take it to the next level in my relationship with my wife is we talk about sex every single day or night. Talk about it. I didn't say we have sex, but it is a given. And it's usually when we go to bed, right? I mean, we have busy lives. We work all day. We've got kids. So that's the typical timing of it. But we get in bed and we say, what are you interested in? And it's been shocking the variety of answers that we both give each other. Yes, I have a much higher sex drive than my wife, which I think is, from my research and conversations I've had, I think that's typical. That's not to say it has to be that way. Often, not the majority, but often the woman has the higher sex drive. So that's not super important, but navigating the divergence in sex drive, that's what's important. So we talk about it every night. And, what I'm almost always a go. Like I'm ready. Yeah, I would like to have sex. That would be great. But I'm able to show up to that conversation. And sometimes I can say, listen, I could tell you were wearing something hard tonight during dinner. I can tell this is not sexy time for you. And just by me saying that, so that my wife doesn't have to reject me, that is a huge benefit down the road for her. She just feels closer to me for acknowledging that. Likewise, my wife will show up in that conversation and sometimes she'll say, I'm not really interested in sex. I'm not really interested in orgasming, but I am interested in doing something nice for you because I just feel really close to you and I want to show up that way. And so we can have some form of sexual contact that, it doesn't take an hour and it's not orgasmic for her necessarily, but she feels good about it. I don't feel like it's obligatory. She has said, this is a gift and I want to give you this gift. And so by getting away from the taboo, right, getting away from the stigma and talking about sex every single night, we have grown so much closer emotionally, intellectually, because we're basically, what happens now, Dan, it's fascinating. We'll lay down, I'll be like, I bet this is what you want. She'll be like, I bet this is what you want. So we're like answering each other's question and we're right 95% of the time. And so anyone who thinks, sex is one thing, talking about sex, that's a no-go. I would encourage you. You want black belt in intimacy and sexual contact, you got to talk about it and you got to talk about it a lot.
That's so good. Great. Matt, where can people go to learn more about you, your work, and what you offer?
Well, we would love to invite people to check out the Untoxicated podcast. that kind of trifecta of topics that I talked about, including the emotional intimacy in committed partnerships. That's the kind of stuff we talk about. We talk about all kinds of relationship issues. So we'd love to have them check us out there. If they'd like to participate in our research, we invite people to go to untoxicatedsurvey.org and take a quick survey. It'll take a minute, and we'll provide resources based on the answers. And I will contact the person directly and kind of tell them what we think about their answers. So it's an opportunity for people to say, hey, this is how my relationship is showing up right now. Well, what do you think? Get an outside observer's opinion.
That's so good. All right, I'll include those links in the show notes.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you'd like help implementing any of the things we talk about on this podcast to your marriage, so it's custom and specific to you, sign up for coaching or get some counseling from Get Your Marriage On. Myself or my team, we're professionals. This is what we do, and we are invested in helping you succeed in your marriage. Whether it's specific to sexuality concerns or emotional connection, we can really help you move that needle and move you closer to your marriage goals. You'll find those details at getyourmarriageon.com. And please share this podcast with your married friends. They would thank you for life. Download our apps, Intimately Us and the new one, Sparked, and please go get your marriage on.